Hello and welcome to the agenda. I am Ajay Kaul. In this program today, we will be discussing about the new education policy unveiled by the government. The central government has announced sweeping changes in the school and higher education system as it unveiled the new education policy. The new policy replaces a 34-year-old policy which was thought to be outdated. However, the announcement of the new policy has kicked up a major debate in the country. While some are hailing it as a much needed progressive move, some others are attacking it, terming it as communalisation and commercialisation of education. In the agenda today, we will try to figure out whether it is a good or a bad policy. To share their views, we have with us Professor Brajesh of Delhi University and Mr. Sunit Chopra, a leftist thinker. But before we start the debate, let's have a look at this small report.
A major debate has been kicked off over the new education policy unveiled by the central government with the aim of effecting fundamental changes in the education system and bringing it in tune with changing times. The policy aims to reform secondary education and restructure higher education in tune with the new world. The policy lays a special emphasis on early childcare education. There is a big move to streamline preschool education until the age of 6 and carrying out education in regional language till class 5. It entails teaching in mother tongue till class 5. It also has a provision of infrastructural and academic support to dropouts. The policy offers multiple exit points in the studies, which means that one could get into employment at different ages, different times and different levels of education, which is a thoughtful strategic structure. Inclusion of vocational training is an added benefit. A common aptitude test for undergraduate admissions will ease the pressure from students to prepare for multiple exams. Under the policy, the government wants to allow foreign universities to set up campuses in India. This is aimed at upgrading higher education and standards by bringing in the best international practices to the country. Focus on digital education will hold us in good stead in the times to come and impact students to tune in to demands of future. One downside of the NEP is that it is highly regulated and doesn't focus on the improvement of government schools. But overall, the policy promises to usher in equitable access to education while creating a more future-ready workforce. Bureau Report.
My first question is to Mr. Chopra. Mr. Chopra, there is a lot of criticism about the new education policy. Some people say it will lead to communalization and commercialization. What are your views on this?
My view is that education is a fundamental right, and if you force people to pay privately for education, and you are charging us a 4% cess, then what are you doing? You are cutting the pocket of the common man on both sides. The second thing is, in what they have promised, 40% of the education is going to be online. What is that? Who is going to be able to afford the internet connection, the devices, and so forth? The third thing is, you are going to have twinning with foreign universities. And already many of these universities are getting twinned with colleges who will then become independent. Now these independent colleges will not have the funds from the UGC. They will be forced to raise funds on their own, which means those funds will have to come from the field. So the whole thing is going to be a national elimination education. That is, worse than that, you have no reservation anymore. The UGC will not be there, reservations will not be there, the direct education that a school child gets may well not be there. Then what are you going to achieve? You are going to charge a step and people are going to pay, and eventually they're going to get tired of education and walk out. That is very dangerous for a country, because education, according to the 1993 law.
Okay, you're talking about higher education and university education, that there will be no reservation, etc. But do you think there is no positive element in this education policy?
I don't believe that there is no positive element, because we are not going to create bonded labor for foreign factories. We have to realize that if a child is given education in the mother tongue, it will be the most profound and the most proper thing to do. But here you are given three choices, and nobody knows what you're going to do, and nobody knows what you're going to get, and nobody knows what you can afford. So the whole thing is chaotic. There is no actual depth of analysis behind this setup. It was something that was started by the East India Company in 1813. It went further in 1830, and it became Lord Macaulay's thesis in 1835.
The government also says that some areas like flexibility of choosing subjects and teaching in mother language up to 5th grade are some of the good elements in this. How do you see it?
I think the mother tongue is the most important. I have great respect for the different mother tongues of the Indian people in different states. And I think education in the mother tongue should be up to the 8th class, so that the children can understand what they are being taught. Otherwise, you are actually creating parrots and not people. And it's very important that children are not bhakts, but people with their own views, their own thinking, and their own independence.
When we talk about the flexibility of choosing subjects, the government and their spokespersons or those favoring that are saying that it will lead to maybe more targeted education, and people will be skilled in particular subjects, and it will be job oriented. How do you see
I understand you perfectly, but the point is, if you don't know what you are targeting, how do you target? If you have three crazy languages which you can choose from, and 40% of the people are going to have digital education only, they will be half educated or uneducated. So they have no capacity to target what they want.
Because there is an argument, the current education system is like, if you are educated, you are graduate and you do PG, and also then you don't have the skills, and that is why you don't get the jobs. That is why there is so much of unemployment. Do you agree with this view?
I would say that unemployment is not a question of lack of skills. Unemployment is there because your owners of private companies, they want cheap labor. And if there is not a large amount of unemployed people in the country, they are not going to get that cheap labor. So in order to give cheap labor to the factories, you are creating an uneducated and half-educated society.
So will you agree that over the decades, the education system has not been paid due attention, and we have been spending very few percentage of GDP. Now the government says we'll spend 6% of the GDP on education. How do you see this?
The question is, what are you going to spend that 6% of the GDP on? I know very well that it's the only thing that I'm going to spend money on is technical material, is some form of technology, because you are not thinking of them. You are thinking of who is going to be your twin abroad and how you're going to bring them in, and what use is it to you, and what use is it to the factory. The point is, the majority of Indian people still are employed in the rural areas. And what they first need is education that prevents blind faith, and scientific temper is something that you project. But what you have done here has nothing to do with scientific temper. It has to do with technology, but not science.
No, we
And
are.
in fact,
I think we have a lot of talent if we take into consideration the scientific temper. But still,
right,
we don't rank anywhere in the world. What are the causes? What are the reasons? You see.
the first reason is you don't respect your people. कितने दलित हैं हमारे देश में जिनको रोज मारपीट होती है। आज ही गुड़गांव में, जहाँ से मैं बोल रहा हूँ, एक आदमी को मारा गया क्योंकि लोग समझ रहे थे कि वो बीज बेच रहे हैं। इस तरह के जंगली लोगों में और जंगल राज, जहाँ पर सबसे ज्यादा रेप दुनिया में, हिंदुस्तान में हो रहे हैं, आप क्या समझते हैं कि क्या मिलेगा? आप उनको थोड़ा इतना भी सिखा देंगे कि पुलिस के सामने झूठ कैसे बोलना और कुछ नहीं सिखाता।
वो that beef eating and those aberrations will always be there in any society. But I'm talking.
नहीं है, aberration नहीं है। Every Indian has a right to eat anything they want, including buffalo.
No, I'm saying there will be elements always, but I'm talking about education system.
It's not an element. कितने केसेस हुए और दलित के ऊपर जो हमले हैं कितने हुए हैं, वो तो आप जानते हैं। तो जो शिक्षा आदमी को यही नहीं सिखा सकती कि हमें तुलसीदास के आगे जाना है। जब तुलसीदास कहते हैं कि गंवा शूद्र पशुनारी सकल तारण के ही अधिकारी, तो हम उससे ही किसी को आगे नहीं ले जा सकते कि क्या शिक्षा देंगे।
Okay, Mr. Chopra, we also had Professor Brijesh from Delhi University. He has joined us now. Mr. Brijesh, I would like to ask you your views on the national new education policy.
Yes. You see, let us not discuss all the kinds of things that you have been discussing. Let us come to the point. So we have a new education policy at hand. Now, I will give you one or two characteristics which no one should have a problem with. One is that it's an expansionary policy, which means it intends to expand the horizon of education in this country. So earlier, education began at 6 years of age. Now it should begin at 3 years of age. And universal education was a right till 14 years of age. Now it is till 18 years of age. There is a change in the framework of school education also. For instance, the last 2 years, people will have a choice of doing some skill. Now, all these things are expansionary in the following sense, that not only you are for a longer period in the education system, in the school system, but when most of you leave out school, 75% of you, and do not head to a higher education institution, that is, you head to a job. So this 2 or 3 years of skill education will help you there. Now, coming to higher education, the effort is to make it more transparent and give more option to the candidate. You see, all these are in the nature of the policy, but then remains the job of implementing it, where you need resources and where you need government will. Now, all that is in the future. But as far as the policy is concerned, the new education policy 2020, it has had widespread consultation. It came to Delhi University's Teachers Association. We got a copy of the draft early 2019, and there was a discussion in each college on it, and we have all sent our feedback. Some of it has been incorporated, some of it has not been incorporated. Now, that's how policy frameworks run. So as far as the policy is concerned, I don't think you can have too much of a problem with this. There are problems here and there, but broad-based opinion, if you want, it's a progressive document.
Professor Brijesh, when any policy is announced, there will always be analysis about that policy. So
yes.
there is an argument. It's because we are a democratic country, we are not like China. Nobody questions them, so we have to maybe analyze. So there is an argument that higher education, because of this policy, will lead to commercialization. How do you?
Okay.
What is your view on that?
Yes. You see, I am a junior faculty in Delhi University. There are more senior faculties there also. Now, as a junior faculty, do you know that 75% of Delhi University operates on ad hoc teachers? What kind of commercialization are you talking about? 75% of Delhi University, the premium university in the country, is operating on teachers who are not permanent. This is the standard of the so-called government institutions. As a young professor, as a young assistant professor, do I not need some kind of permanence, whether it comes from the government source or from a government and private source? How am I concerned with that? You see, so everything is not hunky-dory in the government system.
So, as is the argument that government is now trying to wash its hands off in the education sector. Is it that correct assessment then?
My dear sir, the government, as far as this policy is concerned and the intentions of the government, which are clear in this policy is concerned, the government is doing no such thing. The government as it is has not been able to expand Delhi University in the last 50 years. The last expansion happened, the last colleges were formed in 1960, 65, 70. After that, for 50 years, how many colleges, new colleges have you had? Some evening colleges have been added, those also very few. Now, the government has already shown you its limitation. So, the other kinds of funds, the other kinds of resources will partially come from the government. The government has already promised that it will increase the budget allocation from 4.5 to 6. Okay, that's about 35% increase. But most of the Delhi University has to expand twofold, threefold. Are we aware of the lakhs of students who pass class 12 in Delhi but do not find a place in Delhi University? They pass their school from Delhi. They have to go into technical institutes. They have to go to other states, or they simply drop out of the formal education system and take up some job.
So there is there is also an argument, since suppose if we implement this NEP, only the people with money or the students with money can get higher education, and those who don't have, they are left out. What do you say on this argument?
These things are in the realm of fine print. Now, I don't deny it. I am not one who's holding a case for the government. I'm actually mildly unhappy with the government. The state of affairs that is there in the higher education, I'm unhappy with it. But since everything has been in a stalemate for 34 years, any opening is to be welcomed. Let us welcome this expansionary, promise that is there in this policy, and let us see how it works. You see, what is the harm if India has more private universities? More teachers will get jobs. More students will get admission. The government has capped the fees, so some people can come to the government sector. People who cannot compete here can go to the private sector. Let us have all kinds of things. You see, the problem is we are at a very sorry pass. Now, we are trying to break up this logjam. So here is a policy which promises certain things, which promises progressive steps, which promises accountability in the university system, in the school system, transparency, and a little bit of choice to the students. You see, you can drop out for 2 years, come back, pick up your credits from the credit bank, and move ahead. Now, if you drop out at 2 years out of college, you just drop out. You have no place to go. So that is the kind of thing there is. And I think on the whole, this is a progressive policy. We can always quarrel about the nitpicking, and we in Delhi University Teachers Association are very good at it. We keep quarreling with the government always, but it makes sense to support this new policy which has come after 30-40 years. And imagine 70 years, we have had our own government in this country, and 75% of people who pass out of a school have nowhere to go in the education system. Do we agree with it or not? If we agree with it, then let us hold on to any little change, any little promise that we are having. That is my point.
Okay,
Nothing less.
Let me now turn to Mr. Chopra. So what is the problem if we are changing and maybe going away from the past? Because if we consider our education system over 7 decades has not made any big bang things. In fact, our IITs even don't rank anywhere in the world among the world universities or institutions. So what is the problem if we suppose make a change or maybe try something new?
You don't try experiments on people as though they were animals. You have a responsibility. I know I fought for the MNREGA Act, and I know very well that we gave them 17 points. They accepted about 12, 13, 14. And now what is happening? You are not even following the law. You are supposed to pay every 2 weeks, and there are thousands of crores of money lying waste, and you have not given them their wages for 1 year, for 2 years. Now tell me, if this is the way your government is going to act, then don't fool us with all kinds of 83 pages of rubbish, which in fact goes back 200 years.
But Mr. Chopra,
for 200 years the East India Company couldn't do what you wanted to do, you are not going to succeed in doing anything new. And they say the road to hell is paved with good intention, and that we should not do.
But if I may point out here, sir, this is not the first time any government has tried bringing maybe foreign universities or something. I remember the previous UPA government when Sibal was, I think, HRD minister. At that time, an effort was to made to allow foreign universities to come inside into India. So they tried, but I think they didn't pursue it further. Maybe this government will try to pursue it further.
It's not a question of pursue. You pursued it, but the foreign universities didn't want to come. They didn't want to come. They don't want to spend money. You think they're going to spend money. They think they're going to waste money. They would much rather have apprentices at half the price, working in their factories as full workers, and they will be exploiting labor more than before and lowering wages at the same time. They don't mind.
So let me point out also one thing more here, that RTE, Right to Education, which was brought in 2009, that was not actually according to some assessment that the dropout rate increased as students went up in education, higher studies. So that means that it was not a successful policy, isn't it, Mr. Chopra?
It is not a question of the policy being successful. If I want a policy to fail, like MNREGA, the Prime Minister and Parliament has said that I knew this policy will fail, and I prove it to you how it is failed. Today, under COVID, they have been forced to expand it. So they have been lying before that to the Indian people. They didn't want to implement MNREGA, and now they have been forced to do it under COVID and the corona pandemic. So you can see very well, if you don't want to succeed, you're going to fail anyhow. There's no problem. And this government does not want to implement anything. It only wants to sell promises like the Jyotishi does on the pavement. But nobody ever thinks.
Let me ask this question to Professor Brajesh. as Mr. Chopra says, there is a question mark on the government's intent about implementation and sincerity, and as he says that they only make announcements and pronouncements. What do you say on this?
Okay. You see, let us divide these two things. So there is a policy, and then there is implementation. Now, all of us have grown up in this country. This government has only been there for 6 years. We all know that we fare very, very poorly on implementation. So let us leave the implementation for a moment. Let us discuss this policy vis-a-vis the earlier policy. You were just now talking about the RTE. The RTE promised you universal school education up till the age of 14. Now that is ridiculous. What does the poor boy or the poor girl do after 14 years of age? This policy is far more comprehensive than the earlier policies we have had. So I'm just talking about policies. Leave the implementation for at the side for a moment. We'll come to it later. As a policy, as I said,
Professor
and I will
Brijesh,
repeat,
isn't implementation a key part of any policy?
Part of policy.
my dear sir, of course it is. But you should first build up a good foot ruler, a straight foot ruler. उसको measure कैसे करेंगे वो तो बात का बात है. पहले एक foot ruler तो manufacture कीजिए जो straight हो.
Professor Brijesh, let me point out one thing.
Manichaeism in philosophy.
One point about this NEP is that there is a thrust on skill education or skill development, isn't it? So does it mean the government is accepting that they had a big skill development program, it has failed? Is that an admission?
You see, these
Quite
things,
right.
let us not be, let us not jump to idealism on the one hand and, all kind of nihilisms on the other. Let us have a medium ground. Of course, things only work to an extent. Who will believe if the government says that our skill development program has flourished and everyone is skilled? No, not at all. You see, and this skill development, which now is a part of the curriculum, is a good thing. Why is it a good thing? Because as it is, 70%, 75% of your school students, when they pass out of class 12, they're going to do a carpentry and blacksmithy as it is. So जब ऐसा हो ही रहा है, then you better incorporate it in the curriculum in the final 1 or 2 or 3 years of the school education, so that they are better equipped. Who is saying that the skill development program has succeeded? No program succeeds. We all know how much we succeed.
No, that's why I was talking. That's why I was talking about implementation part. So let me talk to. Let me.
You can't divide implementation from policy, because the two are part and parcel of the same thing.
Exactly.
Philosophically.
Exactly.
Otherwise, it's Manichaeism.
Exactly. Let me come to Mr. Chopra. Mr. Chopra, there is one also provision about internship. There is a provision for internship. So why is it a bad idea to have internship while you are educating, you are studying?
You are selling cheap slaves to slave drivers. That's why. I know people who come to my union. I know people who come to me for internship. The point is they are not paid anything. They are not given a proper wage.
But that is
and they have to do the work of a proper worker.
But Mr. Chopra,
that kind of internship is a hidden form of bonded labor or slavery.
No,
and that is wrong.
Mr. Chopra,
it is against the principles of the Indian Constitution.
Mr. Chopra, in fact, the concept, or the definition of internship is that you learn without being paid. But you learn some skill, isn't it? So why is a bad idea?
What do you learn? If your company is closed, today you look at your company, what is your actual percentage of production? How much do you actually use of your capacity? You are not doing it. So what are you going to teach them? You are actually not bothered about the reality, and you want to sell a leaven to the Indian people.
But isn't the internship prevailing even in the current system? I see so many, we have received so many requests If somebody
I
is
know,
doing, so they have to do internship, 1 month internship, 3 month internship in some institute, some company.
Request, but the point is, the principle is against the Constitution of India.
But maybe we have to think beyond, we have to go beyond, look at the
We have
progressive.
to go beyond the Constitution.
Not beyond the Constitution,
What?
I mean think futuristic.
Then my point is, you can't do it with RCE on your head.
So let me turn to Professor Brijesh. Is the Constitution not being, followed because of this policy?
Sir, that is not, let me look at this policy from another angle. There are certain things, extracurricular things, that school students in this country are already forced to do. Anyone who is in class 10, 11, 12 is already trying to learn up some computer, do some cooking courses, some computer courses, some this or that, because he's not sure, not confident about a job. This policy goes that one step further to institutionalize that reality. What is wrong in it? See, let us not be too idealists.
So what is wrong, Mr. Chopra? What is wrong in it?
He is confusing hobbies with labor. Labor has a certain discipline, and that discipline is put together with a living wage. It is put together with certain rules and laws. Today we have come to a situation where many states, even when people who were unemployed were going home to their villages from the towns, they removed the labor laws. I mean, a government that has no respect for law. What are they going to give us in education? They'll have no respect for science, they'll have no respect for philosophy, and they will actually be creating parrots and slaves.
So power and play, one last question, we are running out of time, Professor Brijesh. There are also allegations that it will lead to communalization. Do you agree with this? Last brief comments.
No, where is the communal factor in this? Kindly point it out to me. In your mother tongue or the regional Hindi, there's no compulsion of English or Hindi. You can study in Tamil, you can study in Telugu. Where is the communal angle in it? Or rather, the question should be, how does it increase the communal angle? A little bit of communal thing is always built into any social structure. But how does it increase it? I don't think it increases it at all. Language-wise, religion-wise, gender-wise, I think it's quite a progressive document. We are a young nation. There are so many school-going, college-going, university-going population. We should have 8%. Why only 6%?
So I think the debate.
Fight about that.
I think the debate will continue on this for some more time. Thank you both of you for participating in this debate. My time is running out on this show. Thank you. This is all in the agenda today. Thanks for watching. I'll be back with another important topic on Monday. Till then, goodbye.